Aloha, welcome to the Emily T. Gail Show. I'm delighted to be talking today with Linda Elliott, who is the founder and director of the Hawaii Wildlife Center up in Kapaau on the northern end of the beautiful Big Island of Hawaii. And also with us today is Rae Okawa, who is the development coordinator. So Linda, let's start with you. I mean, I've known you for years, and you just started celebrating your 4th year up at the Hawaii Wildlife Center. You had some wonderful, we'll talk about it, your 3rd year anniversary, wonderful educational programs, but it's been going on for years. And when I met you, the Hawaii Wildlife Center was a vision. And I remember thinking at the time, wow, that's some pretty ambitious visions that Linda has, but you were doing so much at the time anyway with your dream of having the Hawaii Wildlife Center. And let's go way back to you, where you grew up, your education, where the love of wildlife came from, and your journey. Give us an overview.
It's been an incredible journey, and I'm so glad that you've been a part of it, and it's been amazing. I started out, I think I knew at a very, very young age my passion for wildlife. I think my earliest memory is when I saw the movie Born Free, and I thought that's what I wanted to be doing. And so I knew going through school that I loved sciences, I loved biology, I loved learning everything there was to learn about animals. And I started following that path early on, and my father was in the military, so we moved quite a bit, and I got to live in some amazing places around the world. But Hawaii was his last station, and this is where I graduated high school, and this is my chosen home. And I graduated high school on Oahu at Kalaheo High, and I was frustrated because it was hard to learn anything about native species from the islands or island ecosystems. And then I started at University of Hawaii, and the same thing happened, and I had to go out of state to get a wildlife biology degree. And then I came back and I started at the Honolulu Zoo. And then my husband and I moved over to the Big Island in 1988. And in 1994, I started the first business plan for the Hawaii Wildlife Center. And it ran into some hurdles, and set it aside and did emergency response wildlife work around the world, and then settled down again and pulled it out in 2004. And it became a reality with the organization formed in 2006, groundbreaking in 2008, finishing our building the end of 2011. And so we just celebrated our 3rd year since the grand opening. We've had 2 years of wildlife under our belt. We're going into our 3rd year of wildlife care. And we're the only wildlife hospital in the state of Hawaii. And we only care for native Hawaiian species. So for us in Hawaii, that's mainly animals with wings. So that's almost 70 species and subspecies of birds, and the Hawaiian hoary bat. So we get to work with some incredibly endangered animals and give them a second chance at life. And in addition to that, we work on conservation projects. So we get to work with healthy birds in programs in the wild. Recently I was on Midway Atoll helping translocate 28 critically endangered lace-end duck to Kure Atoll. And that's at the far north end of our archipelago. And these birds used to be throughout the Hawaiian island chain. Their numbers went down to less than 11 birds, and now they're coming back to several hundred. So there is a chance to have success stories. And we talked about in the past another success story is the nene, and our work with bringing them back from near extinction.
Well, Linda Elliott, a director and founder of the Hawaii Wildlife Center up in Kapaau in the northern end of the beautiful Big Island of Hawaii. Yeah, I'm going to go back a little bit. The building is there. It's been. Let's go back to like early 2000, maybe. I think that's about when I met you. And my first introduction, and like when I started learning some things, was you introducing me to the endangered nene. Mm-hmm. Not so much introducing me to the fact that they were endangered, but everything that was around that. Like why were they? How did their numbers diminish, and where did they live? Where did they reside? And and teaching all of us that we're out on the golf courses, don't feed them potato chips and bring bread and everything, and really teaching us that grass is what they feed on. So let's go back to start with the nene. And I did listen to an old interview that we did a few years ago, and you were just getting started with the Laysland. How do you say the duck?
Laysan duck.
Laysan duck, and it's so great that even that journey has expanded to such reaches. So the nene, let's talk about that, because I remember we had some of the kids from the Waimea Middle School with Patty Cook and the West Hawaii Exploration Academy. And at the time, I used to say to you, Linda, you're doing it like, little step by little step. That's why I have so much admiration for you, because now here you are in your facility that you recruited the volunteer effort it took to build it. But meanwhile, you were taking all those little steps in the community outreach and in educating the children and us adults. And I thought the nene was a great example of what you started teaching us. But there's so many of them now, we almost have to go back and re-educate everybody, right? Let's talk about that in terms of where they live, the numbers that were here years ago, and what's happening with the numbers these days.
Yeah, that's such a great success story. I mean, their numbers went down to 30 nene left in the wild from tens of thousands. And, then they went into a breeding program and were reintroduced in the wild. Now there's almost 2,500, and they're on 4 or 5 islands now. And on the Big Island is a great population, and they're starting to spread out. I was part of a program that brought about 400 or more nene from Kauai to the Big Island for introduction here and helping the population continue to grow. And so now we're seeing those nene going in different areas, and so we're seeing them in historic ranges. They're coming to Waikoloa, they're coming to the Mount Alani resorts. They're spreading their wings and finding their way around the island, and we're really excited to have them become neighbors in our area. But it also puts a responsibility on us to behave appropriately around them. How do we help them without causing problems? And so, like you said, we work with the students, and they were creating presentations and posters and showing that, when you see nene, that it is such a great honor that this is not only our state bird, but it's the only living goose in the Hawaiian Islands. And it is an endangered species, and it requires our care and our respect, but not to do things that might cause problems. So feeding them human food is not a good idea, and it causes them to behave inappropriately, and it also causes them to have bad diets, which affects their nutrition. So we ask that you observe them and enjoy them from afar, but don't interact with them.
So the grass on the golf courses and, all around, that is the protein that they're looking for, the nene are looking for.
They're looking to graze.
Yeah, and the thing about it is that, as you say, the nene is our state bird, and it is wonderful that they're coming down into the neighborhoods in the lower elevations, right? Is that where they originally were?
Well, they were. No. They were throughout the islands. They, have regular migration during the season and during the day. So going up and down in elevation is part of their normal behavior. So when you see them coming to the coastline, that's a good sign, because that's where most of the grass areas were, where they did most of their grazing.
So that's the good news, and the even better news is if we're all educated about what not to feed them and just enjoy them, because there are really unintended consequences when we're feeding, food, like all of us, when we're not quite eating properly, right?
Exactly.
And so Rae, tell us a little bit about your association with Hawaii Wildlife Center, and did you have a knowledge of, is that your passion? How did it come, and how much did you know about the nene? Did you grow up around this kind of knowledge?
Well, absolutely. I am actually a bird nerd.
Okay.
And I'm proud to say I'm a bird nerd. I was born and raised on Oahu. And I developed a fascination with birds in high school, and I actually went to Cornell University to get my bachelor's in science because they have the laboratory of ornithology, and that was the mecca of bird everything. And I sort of lived there for my 4 years of college, and then I got my master's immediately after that, environmental studies, and I met Linda while I was getting my master's at the University of Pennsylvania.
Wow, how great that you could come back home.
Exactly. So the project for my master's was to write a fundraising plan for an organization of our choice. And I knew I wanted to come back to Hawaii. I did not want to stay on the East Coast. And I researched who was out there, and back then Linda didn't even have a completed building. And just out of the blue, I called her up and said, hey, do you need someone to write you a fundraising plan? And I've been with her ever since.
Wow, I love that. Now, where did your passion for birds? You said as a kid you were a bird nerd. Where did that come from? Did you have a mentor? And where that?
It was more observational.
Okay.
So seeing birds in the park and their behaviors, I originally got very interested in bird behavior, and then as I learned more about the different species, it was just shocking to realize that all the birds that I was used to are actually not native, and that sort of sparked the interest in, well, what is native, and it sort of grew from there.
And where did you place all that interest as a high schooler, or were there organizations that you could, or friends that you had, or the Audubon Society, or where did all that energy and interest and knowledge that you were picking up as a kid that was obviously leading you to Cornell University?
Well, it was more, it was observational, and in the beginning it was actually more through art.
Okay.
So I would draw a lot of birds. I'd go to the Honolulu Zoo and I'd spend all my time at the aviaries looking at the birds there, sketching them. And then when I went to Cornell, that's when I started going into research.
That's Rae Okawa that we're speaking with, who is the development coordinator for the Hawaii Wildlife Center, the beautiful Hawaii Wildlife Center, and very worthwhile and an important ingredient in our Big Island. And it's up in Kapaau, the northern end of the Big Island of Hawaii. And as Rae said, a few years ago, the building wasn't there. Now, Linda Elliott, the founder and director, you were talking about the nene birds, and as you say, they're coming there at Waikoloa Village Golf Course now, even a few at Manalani. So we're going to kind of let this be the beginning of kind of keep on re-educating everybody. You know, please don't feed them bread or anything. Let them eat their natural environment, but enjoy them and be aware of it. But Linda, 4 years ago, or about 3 years ago, because you're into your fourth year, the grand opening up in Kapaau, you're right behind the Kohala Middle School. You really got the school involved as you do the whole community up there, the Hawi Kapaau community. But that place, you must have 300-400 people at the grand opening and tours. But the amazing part was so many of those volunteer people that were there were people that in some way had played a part in this journey that you're on. So it's been a community journey, and you're always so eager to make sure that it's known that it's been a community journey. So talk about that process of, designing the building. How did you decide on that site? A little bit of that history, because it's a pretty good sized facility.
It is. It wouldn't have happened if the North Kohala community hadn't adopted this project wholeheartedly from the beginning. And the project has attracted just the most wonderful people to it. And Rae's an example of that. She found the project, she found us, and it's the same with our architect. He wrote an email to me saying, I heard of your project, how can I help?
Now, was that?
And that was Will Rural.
Okay.
And of Rural Walker Associates. And he's from Boston, but he had a connection to Hawaii. He saw this project, it touched him. He got in touch with us. He donated all of his services, 100% pro bono. With his other architect working with him on island was Rhodey Lee and Aaron Spielman. All the engineers pro bono as well. The land itself, the use of the land, the 2-acre lot was donated by Surety Kohala, the largest landowner at the time in North Kohala, and that really kicked it off by them accepting this project and having it perfectly placed by the middle school, allowed the middle school students to follow the development of the building, and then come over and plant the very first plants, and then continue to follow the project through. And every semester they do something with us that participates in it. And the latest project that they had worked on is creating a coloring book that is going to sell in our brand new retail shop. So we've got lots of great gifts for people who are looking for gifts or souvenirs about native Hawaiian species, and one of them is this middle school designed art project with all the native Hawaiian birds that they chose to draw, and they put a little bit about the Hawaii Wildlife Center in there too. So we've got volunteers that we rely on to keep the facility running, to keep the wildlife programs running. And without them, I think we've got close to 40 regular volunteers now. And we're always looking for more, and that's one way that the public can stay involved with us. And
Well, certainly going on to HawaiiWildlifeCenter.org and signing up for your newsletter. It gives you a voice in a way that your newsletters are wonderful. You know, like every organization, you wish you could just do your work and not have to worry about fundraising and grant writing and everything, but you do. So what a blessing to have someone like Rae Okawa helping you out, but it's endless, isn't it? I mean, the fundraising efforts, and this is the only facility in Hawaii, and you're not just covering the islands, you're covering Midway and the Kiara Atoll. Is that how you say it? Kiri Atoll. So,
Atoll, yeah.
Yeah, so and you have to transport the. Let's go through the process of what happens when somebody calls you about an injured bird, or
Sure.
and meanwhile, Rae, on an everyday basis, it's a fundraising effort, right?
Absolutely, but it's more about bringing in the community and giving them the opportunity to do amazing things. It's more than asking for money and raising funds. That is important, but it's truly something that we're passionate about, and it's the opportunity to partner with us and do amazing things for our native wildlife. So I mean, I love what I do, and as a biologist by background, it's not something that I grew up exposed to, but I've really enjoyed what it's become, and I'm looking forward to seeing what else is in store.
And likewise, or conversely, there's a lot of people that have the resources that they have an opportunity to give to an organization where they see so many results and such an effort. That was the thing that I was so amazed at the grand opening, was not just the number of people that were there, but who was there. From every demographic, and from the resorts, and from the little communities in Waimea and Waikoa Village. Your sphere of interest and influence is across the island, because we all get outdoors and we recreate, and we're hiking, and we're, whether it's Po'olu Valley or Kaka Falls or wherever we are, all of this affects all of us. I don't care if you're riding your bike out on the highway, right? All of this we're all affected by it.
Very much so, and it was that grand opening highlighted that the community made it happen, and now we need the community to continue, and that's why it doesn't go away. It actually becomes more important for the community to be involved, and we rely mainly on individual donations to do the animal care and the conservation programs. So when you invest in the Hawaii Wildlife Center, you're investing in caring for sick and injured native wildlife, giving them a second chance. You're investing in these conservation programs that are reversing the extinction trend. And you're investing in allowing people to share and enjoy in our truly native Hawaiian species here, and all of our birds and bats. So it's quite a fun and exciting opportunity for people to get involved, whether it's through donations, which are really critical for support, or whether it's spending some time or just coming up and visiting us and seeing what we're doing.
And a lot of that can happen with education. I mean, I know, like, my whole life is in terms of wildlife, has been affected by knowing you, even to the point of feeding the birds in my backyard. I'm looking for native plants, so the birds is not bird food. It's that I plant some native plants. You've taught me a lot, to be more conscious of things. And I love the expression, the reverse the trend regarding endangered species, and that does happen with education. And particularly if it starts with young kids, like everything. If we start learning earlier, like I learned 10 years ago, I'm so much more conscious. So when I do see people feeding bread to the nene, I can very gently say, Linda Elliott taught me from the Hawaii Wildlife Center that that's not what they eat. They eat grass. There's plenty of food out there for them in nature. That's what they've lived on for a long time before we started feeding them.
Yeah, and I think that was great. I mean, that's one of the biggest things we say is, plant habitat. The easiest things you can do is on your own property, plant native plant species, and that creates food for the native birds. So instead of putting out artificial food that, is produced, give them the things they need to grow, and put out a bird bath if you want to do something, but don't put out extra food, because it tends to feed the wrong things, and it creates more problems than it solves. So that's one of our native garden is so popular with our volunteers and our visitors, is that you get to see that there's so many beautiful native Hawaiian plants that grow well in this environment and are easy to grow. So, come and visit the native
Well, also
garden,
feeding
too.
and attracting, and would attract a different type of bird too. Would
It
that
will,
be?
and it also attract pests like rodents too. So, putting out any kind of food is
Sure.
usually not a good thing to do.
Well, I always enjoy getting your newsletter because you do it's such a comprehensive newsletter. It's a lot of work for every organization to get that out there in a way that you want to read it, but it is comprehensive and it covers everything. And you just had one that came out. The featured story was about the Laysan duck. So let's just review that a little bit and go on to a couple of the other stories that you put out in this quarter's newsletter.
And I want to...
And also the hours, when people can come up to the center.
Oh, sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things I do want to say is that newsletter goes out quarterly, and it's electronic, and you can sign up for it on our website. And I have to give kudos to Rae she's the editor of that newsletter.
Really?
Yeah,
Wow.
so,
It reads so easily. It's just a nice, smooth, organized read. Yeah.
So she does a wonderful job with that. So it really does make a difference. So please do sign up for it. We're usually the retail area that we have. It was a brand new store that opened the beginning of 2014. Sorry. And so it's available, and everything in there is about native Hawaiian birds and bats, mostly our local artists, and so it's got some great gifts and souvenirs there. All of the proceeds go to caring for the animals in our hospital. So if you come up, it's Tuesday through Saturday from 9 to 3, and if you see a sign in the door that we've gone to lunch or that we ran in the back to do some animal care, and we'll put when we'll be back. So we may not be there as a small team of people handling it, but otherwise we're there Tuesdays
And that's on the Coney
Konipuli
Highway, and there's a sign.
Yeah.
And if you're going to Po'olu Valley, or you're going up to Hawi, or you're sending your visiting friends up to Hawi or Kapaau, I always tell them, if you get a chance, make that left turn off the highway and go see the Hawaii Wildlife Center.
And if you need directions, it's on our website, but it's very easy to get to.
So Rae, as you're writing the newsletter, are you always pretty proud of just how much and how active the Hawaii Wildlife Center is?
I am always amazed. When I write the newsletter, when I do reports for grantors, when I do reports to donors, about just how much and the scope of what we've been able to accomplish just with our limited staff, with our 2 years of wildlife operations under our belt. We've been to the northwestern Hawaiian Islands, we've done training with biologists from American Samoa, we've taken in over 20 different species, 5 of them endangered species. We've done education programs, done outreach, and that's all just with our small staff. So it never ceases to amaze me, and when I'm writing this all up in the newsletter, it just really drives it home how critical the work that we do is, and the huge impact that it has. And absolutely, it never ceases to amaze me.
Well, Linda's never ceased to amaze me. It's the Emily T. Gail Show, and we're talking with Linda Elliott, the founder and director of the Hawaii Wildlife Center, which is up in Kapaau on the northern end of the island, the beautiful big island of Hawaii. And they've been open for they're into their 4th year after many years of Linda's vision. She stayed so patient, and you mentioned Rae Okawa, who was the development coordinator. You mentioned that you worked at the Honolulu Zoo, but Linda, weren't you at the Honolulu Zoo for a while too?
I was. I worked there for 6 years,
Okay.
and my final position was running the animal hospital for the whole zoo. So I
Okay.
worked with birds, reptiles, mammals, everything, and it was a great experience. And Rae, I believe you volunteered there.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Aviaries.
I was just curious if maybe you might have crossed paths without knowing each other.
I'd already moved over to the Big Island.
So tell us about the owl, the whale. A little bit about that. I mean, as far as are there a lot of them? When do we see them? But you've taken care of some, right?
We have. We've had several come through, a bunch actually, and we've had them from at least 3 different islands, from Lanai, Oahu, the Big Island. Come in injured, and we've treated them and gotten them back out into the wild They're amazing. You know, it's the only owl native to Hawaii, and it's a short-eared owl, and it's called the pueo. And it's a small owl, usually active a lot of times dawn to dusk, but you'll see it in the daytime too, hunting. It's different than the introduced barn owl. The introduced barn owl is a bigger bird, and it's got dark eyes and a white face. So if you see that, it's not the native pueo. So you can look at that right away. They're amazing birds. They're beautiful. A lot of families consider them their guardians,
right.
Aumakua, so they're very regal too. And so it's an honor to work with them and the only other bird of prey, which is the Hawaiian hawk, the eo. And we've had a number of eo through, including one that we raised from a little fuzzy nestling into seeing him released back into the wild as a young adult. So we're pretty excited about that.
And how did that little nestling come to you? What was
it? Was found outside of Hilo on the ground, and it had been days without food, and it was threatened by feral cats and others. And so it was unable to find the parent's nest to return it, and so it was orphaned and brought to us to finish raising.
So they were aware that Hawaii Wildlife Center existed, and they took the time to bring the...
Yeah, and that's the
Isn't
other area
that
I
wonderful?
wanted to say, that the public really is valuable in that is getting out there and seeing when animals are in need of care and contacting us so that we can help out.
Well, what's neat also is even people that have come here, in your newsletter you had a note about a Dr. Juan Guerra, who was visiting from New York, and he stopped in. Was he a veterinarian or something?
Yes,
or what
he
was
is.
he? And, okay.
And, I'm gonna let
so
Rae
people are finding their way to the Hawaii Wildlife
Yeah.
Center as a way to also, when they come to visit Hawaii, contribute to the community as well.
And with Ray's connection to Cornell,
Okay.
is how we met the veterinarian.
So your
Juan.
outreach is way beyond. It's
Yeah.
within the islands, but also it's way out with the people that you've known through your education and the interest in biology and birds.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
So talk about that, Rae, as you reach out to others and get them involved and
Well,
educated about what you're doing.
Since we're such a unique resource and such a critical resource to the state and to our wildlife, it was no, I didn't have to sell. It sold itself, and through the lab of ornithology, I got a few contacts there. But actually, Juan is with the Cornell Vet School, and he graduated a couple of years ago, and I've visited the vet school. I talked to the wildlife vets there, and they were really excited. They helped us set up our hospital. And so it's really a rewarding partnership, and it's something that's bringing a lot of valuable knowledge to Hawaii as well.
And interns, you've got a couple or had a couple interns, or it's kind of an ongoing thing, right?
It is an
Talk a little
ongoing-
bit about the interns program and Chris and Ina, who were most recently with you.
Oh yeah, Chris and Alina.
Alina, okay.
Yeah, we've had several volunteers come through already, and they've just been phenomenal. No, and again, it was a situation where they found us, contacted us and said they would love to work with us in Hawaii, and they were excited about our mission. And so they came and worked for us and covered their travel costs and everything on their own.
Wow.
And then worked with us and worked directly in the wildlife areas, or just helping with the whole facility area. And so they've provided incredible, valuable resource. And we're always looking for new people who are willing to either volunteer or want to do internships. And so if you're interested, contact us or go to the website, and we have a volunteer application form on the website as well.
Well, now how did they happen to contact you? How did they know about
I think, people who are really excited about wildlife in Hawaii, or especially avian wildlife, and come down and dedicate some time to us, which is really hugely appreciated.
I should mention John Chiave. He's a very big supporter, isn't he, and his family, and they were at the grand opening and the music, and I see through all the newsletters that he's continually supporting you with his efforts and energy, as he does with so many people.
He's been an incredible support system.
We're out at Waikoloa Beach Resort at the beautiful Waikoloa Bowl, and a little bit of background noise, but it's so pretty, and it's such a great location here. You can do anything, including tape a show, an Emily T. Gail talk show. So that we're talking with Linda Elliott from the Hawaii Wildlife Center up in Kapaau, and also Rae Okawa, the development coordinator, and we were talking a little bit about John Keawe.
And John Keawe, you know,
Keawe.
not only is an award-winning slacky guitarist, you know, he and his family are just major community members, and their support has been incredible. He, like you said, was at the grand opening providing entertainment. He's done that before for us. But also, you know, he had a connection too because his family's Almakua, the guardian, is the Io. And that's the Hawaiian hawk. And so when we got in our young Io, we actually named it Keawe after John for all of his dedication to the Hawaii Wildlife Center. And so he got to come and personally see it and be a part of its recovery and release. So, you know, it's an ongoing with him, his wife, and also his grandkids being involved in the Wildlife Center.
Well, there's not too much that he isn't involved in, and he's such a generous, his whole family are so generous in the community with their time and their energy, and of course the wonderful music and the hula. So the seabird fallout season, that was kind of new to me when I read the newsletter. Talk about the seabirds and what all about the fallout season that runs from September to December.
Every year, yeah, in the islands, seabirds like Hawaiian petrels, the endangered Hawaiian petrel, and the threatened newel shearwater and wedge-tailed shearwaters and others are breeding up in the mountains or along the coastline. And this is the only time that they come back to land, is to, you know, otherwise they stay out at sea the whole rest of the time. And they lay their eggs and raise their chicks, and as the chicks fledge, they fledge at nighttime. And so light pollution can confuse them. So lighting from our cities and from our towns and from our street lights can throw them off, because at night, you know, they're looking mainly at stars above them, and especially on moonless nights. And so they may get confused and run into trouble and end up on the ground. And so, you know, on Kauai they pick up hundreds of them every year. On Oahu there's a couple hundred. And on the Big Island we don't have as many being picked up, but we have people looking for them. And cruise lines will bring them to us, and individuals will bring them to us. And
Really? Is that a fairly new program as far as people being vigilant about being on the lookout for them?
It's been ongoing on Kauai for 30 years, but for the other islands, it's just now getting fairly well organized, where we get the information out, and you know, so we're able to tell people during this season, be sure and look, because you might miss them. You know, if they're down on the ground, you may not look at for
Will
them.
they look like they're struggling or
They
something?
will,
or
because these birds aren't meant to be on the ground. They don't walk well, so they'll look funny on the ground. They'll look like they need help. And so, you know, give us a call, or if you can pick them up safely, we have instructions on the website on how to do that.
and go to the website and look at the picture
Go
of
to
them
the
so that we
website
can be on
and
the
you'll
lookout.
know,
Yeah.
And we'll send out notifications every season, just so that, you know, people can be aware that, you know, September through December is down seabird season, and these are the young birds' first time out, trying to head out to sea, and they may need our help.
So Rae, what do you know today about birds that as a what did you call yourself earlier? As
Bird nerd.
A bird nerd, yeah. I mean, really, when you start watching birds, it's hard to stop, I think. So what do you know about the Big Island that's different? I mean, because it is a little different, right? With which birds kind of reside on which island, and because of different circumstances and the environment and just the awareness. What would you share to people in terms of the Big Island, what you've seen here in terms of how people are really taking note of how they can contribute to reversing that trend for endangered species?
I found that we have actually the most native species on Hawaii Island, and that's something that from Oahu you don't necessarily appreciate as much because you're surrounded by so many introduced species. Just for me, I've did more research in college, and that was in front of a computer screen for a lot of the time. So actually being able to see these birds close up in the wildlife hospital has been amazing, and I've seen the transformation when people get that opportunity too. Our volunteers in the wildlife section, when they get the opportunity to work with patients, when visitors come in and they see photos and videos, they're used to seeing pigeons, so it's something that's just amazing to them, and that transformation, I think, is what's really rewarding and my favorite part of being at the Wildlife Center on the Big Island.
So Rae, once again, Rae Okawa, who grew up on Oahu, was a bird nerd.
Still is.
And moved that on into going to Cornell in biology, was it? Or
Yes.
what was it? In biology. So Rae, so you go to Cornell University studying biology, get your master's. You had known Linda. What a beautiful thing that you found each other and can bring that kind of knowledge and education to the Hawaii Wildlife Center. But it's probably pretty amazing how many people are really out there in that field that are finding their way to you, that didn't have somewhere to kind of put those interests and that energy that they have.
Being the first wildlife hospital in the state, the opportunity to work with wildlife before, unless you were out in the field doing research, was limited. So this is an opportunity that wasn't there before. So I think there's a lot of people, hopefully, that will have an opportunity to come through and either volunteer or become part of our staff. And speaking of our staff, I wanted to mention our wildlife rehabilitation manager, Judy Elal, and she came to us from the mainland with major experience in wildlife rehabilitation and also a certified veterinary technician. So she came highly skilled. And then her technician working with her is Sarah Davis. And the two of them run the entire animal hospital. So they're the ones that most of the volunteers will have an opportunity to work with and learn from.
So they're with you full time?
Judy's with us full time,
Wow.
and Sarah's part time, but she's there on a long-term
That is
basis.
great, because when you had the grand opening, it was really, okay, we got the building now, now we have to maintain it, now we have to get operating expenses, now we have to, at the time I listened to an old Emily T. Gail show that we did a while back, and you were talking about, trying to bring in the staff, Now, let's say somebody walks in the front door and you have the back room, I think, which was the hospital. Mm-hmm. The retail, there's several rooms there, and you tell us a little bit about the configuration of the building, and I love how you call the patients,
yes,
when the patients are brought in, and it's wonderful that the community is actually bringing the patients in, becoming aware that they can come somewhere and bring those birds that they find to you.
We're on 2 acres, and our building is about 4,500 square feet, and it's quite impressive. It was beautifully designed, and it's won many awards as well. So it's hard to miss, and it's lovely. It has a public area that has an education pavilion where we've done classes and presentations, including during our Bird Day celebration for our 3rd year anniversary. We did something every Saturday there during the month of November. So it's quite well used. We've got a courtyard area that we're looking forward to eventually getting in some exhibits, and we've got a design that we finished on that, a master plan. So, in the future there should be the opportunity for more things to do and see while you're at the Wildlife Center. And then as you come in to the store, that's the main entrance, and there's a store area, and it's got lovely items in it on native Hawaiian birds and bat. And you'll see while you're in there some of our front of house staff, and that would be Rae Okawa, our development coordinator, myself as the director, and also Lisa. And Lisa works with Rae on the fundraising aspect and keeping in touch with all of our family ohana of donors that we have as well. And then in the back is where the majority of the work takes place with the wildlife, and that's the hospital area. And birds get delivered through our staging area. They go through an intake area, which is kind of like an emergency room. Everything that happens in there determines what the care is going to be while the bird goes through the process. So Judy and Sarah will be taking the vitals, the heart rates, the temperature. They'll take a blood sample, and they will find out what condition that bird's in and what kind of food, hydration therapy it may need, heat therapy it may need. And then they'll determine if it's going to go in intensive care, which is a separate isolated room off of our clinic, or it'll go into the supportive care inside where it's still inside but getting more supportive care, or it's ready, strong enough to go out into the aviaries, which are the flight areas, which allow us to condition a bird, make sure that it can feed itself, it can fly, it can float in a pool, that it's waterproof.
So that's an enclosed area?
It's a recovery yard which has got a predator-proof fence around
Okay.
it, and it's got 4 aviaries.
I vaguely remember that at the
Yeah.
opening, but just hearing you describe, with the activity that's going on there. And I think what's pretty interesting that is all your staff, like even Lisa, who's joined you, right?
Right.
She's got a Bachelor of Science degree in Health Sciences and Animal Science. So everybody is pursuing their passion.
Everybody, is pursuing their passion and has been attracted and wants to be part of this family that's caring for native Hawaiian birds and bat, and they're really excited about it. And every day coming to work is, it's a joy. It's because we're a team, all there for the same reason, and we get excited about all the patients that come in, and we all try to participate in the releases if we can. Because it's always so rewarding to see those patients go back out into the wild.
Well, with everything you're doing with the patients, but also the education that goes on, the getting out in the community outreach, you're making flyers. You've got a new flyer for the nene that's called Nene in Our Neighborhoods. We talked earlier in the show about how how many more nene there are, which is our state bird, endangered, and it is still endangered,
It
right?
is.
And just that brochure alone, just reminding people, please don't feed the nene. And in order to keep the nene safe, please do not offer food to them. Human food is not part of their natural diet and can pose health risks to the bird. But you're taking these to the golf courses, and it's, putting them in the golf carts, or, hoping that and I'm sure the golf courses are going to do that because it's helpful to them too, and it's of interest to the people that are out there playing golf to be educated. But I think all those little details that you're taking care of are so important, and the golf course is what a wonderful place for the nene to be, because there is so much grass, and that's what they should be eating. So Rae, talk a little bit about you had your 3rd year anniversary. You had a lot of educational programs going on throughout the month, and talk about some of those programs and the reception in the community of the opportunity for people to participate in the programs.
Well, so the community has really been a huge part of why we're able to do what we do. So this was our way of bringing them back and engaging them with us, and sort of giving something back to them. That's fun. That gives them an opportunity to come see us, because it has been a while. So our bird days, actually Linda came up with that idea, that name, bird days, because it's our bird day. And so what it was is, every Saturday in November we had a special event, and it's a wide range of things. So we had a wildlife response talk to take you through the response process, how to rescue birds, who to call, how to pick up a bird if you need to. We had a doodle project, which is really, I'm an art person, so that was I really like that. And it was just the community coming together and drawing, really laid back, low key, just celebrating native birds.
So you said you drew a lot as a child, as a keiki.
Yes,
got into drawing.
I still do.
So you continued that. Oh, isn't that wonderful? So that's how the coloring book probably came about, huh?
Yep.
I like that. So
Yeah.
the coloring book we're referring to, we talked about it earlier in the show, is, well, you tell about it again. But one of you,
Well, you,
right?
that
Yeah.
was a big project you helped with.
Yeah.
So the Kohala Middle School, Hale Ike, their community project was to create a coloring book for the Hawaii Wildlife Center to raise funds for the hospital. So they were tasked with drawing all of the illustrations, doing all of the research for the text, and they did an amazing job. So now it is my turn to take what they've given us and put it together into a cohesive coloring book that will hopefully be produced by the end of the year. So.
And in the retail store. And now, Hawaii Wildlife Center, it's hawaiiwildlifecenter.org. Again, they're up in Kapaau off the Akauni Puli Highway. You make a left-hand turn, there's a sign there, and it's behind the Kohala Middle School, and it's a nice stop on your way up to Po'olu Valley. And even if you're not going to Po'olu Valley, just go a little bit beyond Hawi, and you'll find it. And they're also on Twitter and Facebook. They do a nice job of keeping up on that with photos. And of course, they'd love for you to stop by on, what are the days of the week? Is it Tuesday through Saturday?
Yeah.
And
regular business hours, 9 to 3. and come up and visit. And we've got a great little shop there that you can take some goodies away and contribute to the care of the animals.
And all donations over $10, you're always appreciative, but you like the small donations. That's how you started, really. With we were built on small donations and awareness, and the dream just kept building. And what haven't we talked about that you would like to share to our viewers and our listeners here on the Emily T. Gail Show?
You know, I just think we've covered a lot, but I have to just emphasize how valuable our community is. Everybody can play a role in helping native wildlife and helping Hawaii Wildlife Center care for its patients. And so whether you come and volunteer, or you come and shop, or you donate to us, or you go keep an eye out for any sick and injured native bird out there and give us a call and report it, or bring it to us, that's all huge. That's going to make us successful, and we continue to depend on all of everybody's participation.
And as locals, I think something that is so valuable that we can all do is remind people they can stop at these organizations, because they're not going to read about them every day in the newspaper.
Right.
You know, that they're there. I'm constantly telling people, you know, whether it's to come over here to Waikoloa Beach Resort and enjoy the entertainment, you know, that they provide, or, you know, whatever we can tell visitors about, it really expands their experience on the Big Island when it goes beyond what their usual activities that they might partake in. So it's the HawaiiWildlifeCenter.org. It's Linda Elliott, the founder and director. I've known Linda for many years. We met actually through her work, and it happened to be as a golfer, and I did a lot of golf reporting and everything. Linda came to me and we talked about the nene, and you know how people were feeding them the wrong food out on the golf courses, and you try to start educating. And I'm bringing that up again because as we've been talking and learning how many more nene are coming to the Big Island, and the proliferation in a very positive way. And just like their brochure says, the nene in the neighborhoods, right?
Yep.
Welcome to the neighborhoods, but don't feed them bread and potato chips. So that's a wonderful thing. And those are flyers. If people came up, they could even, you know, carry a few in their car and give them to their friends. I think all those little things are of interest to people. So Rae, last thoughts about your experience here. How long have you been living on the Big Island?
For 2 years.
Okay, so you came here to be associated with...
Yes, as soon as I graduated with my master's, I moved to Kapaau to start working at the Hawaii Wildlife Center.
And as a keiki, did you spend time on the Big Island? Where, you know, you grew up in Oahu, but was this someplace that you would come like a lot of families did?
We came here a couple of times, but I was so young, I don't really remember those trips. I think it's a lot more meaningful now that I'm more aware of my surroundings and what's actually going on, but I have to say that the Big Island is my favorite island now.
and you know, some of the people that of course your contacts, both of you have been, you know, Linda, you've been all over the world, you know, whether there was oil spills or whatever, helping with seagulls and all kinds of things. Penguins. Was it penguins?
Yeah, 20,000 penguins in one spill.
Where was that?
That was in South Africa.
I remember that, yeah.
In Cape Town, South Africa
Okay.
in 2000. So I've been to 6 countries, done over 18 wildlife responses, and it gave me a huge amount of experience, but a great appreciation for Hawaii too. You know, coming home to Hawaii, even though I had all those experiences, it was very special for me to be able to come back.
And kind of anchor all your energies and bring other people to it.
You know, I always had in my heart to help reverse that extinction trend and not be known, hopefully, anymore as the extinction capital of the world.
Yeah. So Rae, and again, you going to Cornell University and having that extensive reach yourself. Now, some of these people like that you had at the 3rd year anniversary, because you had speakers there. You had a Dr. Robert Schallenberger. Is that someone from the Big Island? Or He is, okay.
He spent many years in Fish and Wildlife, and he was also refuge manager out at Midway Atoll, and he has a book published on seabirds. So Dr. Robert Schallenberger will be there, and he was there, and he did a great presentation that included the sounds of seabirds as well. So not only did you get to see his fabulous picture and videos, but you get to hear the calls of these seabirds. And we have, I don't know, over 22 species of seabirds, more than 14 million that call the Hawaiian archipelago their home. So
that are indigenous to
that are indigenous to
the
Hawaii.
really
Yeah,
okay.
Yeah,
Well,
so it's pretty amazing how many you just don't realize there's that many seabirds here because you don't spend unless you spend more time on the open ocean, you probably wouldn't see them.
now, if you mind, let's go through some of the things that we might not know about some of the numbers. You know, going back into the day of, you know, how many. Ray, you mentioned it on Oahu that you found out that a lot of the birds, you were a bird nerd, but a lot of the birds that you were viewing and loving weren't native to Hawaii. So what is the balance there? I mean, is there, you know, you see what my question is, sort of?
Well, I'll let you take the native part, but when people come in, and I like to tell them that Hawaii is an interesting place where really you can take a trip around the world without leaving a park bench. Because as you're sitting, you see a bird from Asia flying by, a bird from Europe flying by, and it's just amazing of all of the introduced species that we have. On the other side, though, the appreciation for what's native sometimes is a little harder to find because you have to work for it sometimes. Forest birds don't fly in trees and parks in a lot of cases. You have to actually hike. So what I found with the Wildlife Center is that it creates a place where people can come and get that appreciation without having to go on the hike if they don't want to or they don't have time. And so that appreciation is huge for me.
Now, I take my runs and trail running up near where the Waikoloa Dry Forest area is, where they're preserving the willy willy trees. And so even up there, so the different what do I want to say, elevations would make a big difference, right, of what we're seeing. So let's say you're going down to Paolu Valley, you're going to see something different than what you see up where the Waikoloa Dry Forest is.
Yeah, you know, Hawaii Island is blessed with having the most diversity of habitat still intact with the most diversity of Hawaiian species still in existence. So this island is pretty special. So like you said, you can go down to the wetland area at Pololu Valley and see endangered Hawaiian stilt. Or you can look off the water and you'll see endangered Hawaiian petrels or shearwaters or red-footed boobies feeding off the ocean right offshore. And then as you go up in elevation, then you start seeing maybe the pueo hunting on the pastures as you're going over the Saddle Road. Eo constantly throughout all of the islands, they've been pretty adaptable, but only on this island is the Hawaiian hawk. But there'll be a blonde one in a dark color phase, so they're very dramatic, very beautiful, and stand out. Then as you go up in elevation, because Hawaiian forest birds were so vulnerable to mosquitoes, above 4,000 foot, where there's less mosquitoes, you see some of the really, really unique forest birds like the iiwi with amazing curved beak, and the Akiapola'au, which is our version of a woodpecker. And so you know, it actually is pretty amazing how many different species you can see on this island, but you have to go look, which makes it part of the fun. And so we hope to encourage people to go out to these different habitats and experience all the varieties available. And it makes it worthwhile. Not only do you get to enjoy different places in Hawaii, but you get to hear different songs of the birds and see different bird behaviors as you do this.
And is there a lot more interest than we might realize as far as people being educated? I've been taking some hikes with the Kona Hiking Club and Kathleen Johnson, and I'm amazed at how educated some of the people on the hikes are about birds and everything that, you know, when we're on our hikes.
Yeah, we're finding people who come right to the Wildlife Center and they are already checking off all the species that they've seen, and they want input on where to go see the others, and they're excited about doing this search for them, and they've got their binoculars and their cameras ready to go. So I think there's a lot more people out there than we realize that actually come to see something very authentic and found only in Hawaii, and they want to go away saying, I saw that personally. I didn't just read about it in a book or see a video on it. I actually got
So
to
it's
see
not
it.
just a golf destination, a beach destination. Hawaii is a bird destination. It's all of those reasons for people to come out.
Yep.
And it's for all those reasons that the Hawaii Wildlife Center up in Kapaau, hawaiiwildlifecenter.org, provides a great service to many of us, because that's what's going to make it all these different reasons everybody comes to the islands. Ray, some of your thoughts about that? You know, the enthusiasm you might feel when you see how interested people are, and not only interested, but kind of self-educated like you were as a keiki?
Right. It's sort of, I see myself in it a little bit, where I'm brought back to that moment where I had the realization where all of the birds that I was used to were not native. So that sparked a deeper understanding of our ecosystems and our species, and it also drove me to take the career path that I went down. So where I see that a lot is with the kids that we work with. When we do programs with the middle schoolers, a lot of times that'll actually open a lot of doors. They'll start asking questions about science, about ecology, and then where before they thought they weren't interested, but really they are. It's just how it's presented.
Yeah.
So it's amazing to see that.
Nothing like mentors in our life, you know, and at any age, because Linda, you've been a great mentor for me. And Ray, I'm delighted to meet you, and I'm so happy for Linda, you know, that you've been able to bring the staff in. And it's been too long since we talked. It's the Emily T. Gail Show, and what a delight to get a chance to catch up with Linda Elliott, the founder and director of the Hawaii Wildlife Center, once again up in Kapaau, just a little bit north of Hawaii, the northern part of the island, which is a must-visit area if you come to visit the big island of Hawaii. And there's a sign that takes you off Oconee Puli Highway, and it's behind the Kohala Middle School right in there. And they've, of course, got the middle school very involved. But it's a wonderful place to stop Tuesdays through Saturdays. Their website, hawaiiwildlifecenter.org. Sign up for their newsletter. You become a strong voice for them when they're out writing grants or anything, but any littlest donation. But the biggest part of it all is to be aware of the Hawaii Wildlife Center and tell other people about it. So it's really a pleasure to get a chance to talk with both of you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's been such a great time, and appreciate it. Mahalo.
Oh, I get a moment with Ray and Linda, and it's always a pleasure to talk to Linda. And I want to say that when I went up to the grand opening, I can't believe you're into your 4th year, but I was just reminded in talking with you today, Linda, that when somebody has a dream, it's so easy to think, oh, that's a pretty ambitious dream. But for some reason, every time I was with Linda in those early years when she would tell me about her vision, I always had a feeling you were, I don't want to say going to pull it off, because it wasn't about that. It was, I knew that you were going to be able to stay focused and keep that commitment to create what you wanted. And it's so exciting that you've come so far with it. But even better yet is when you think of where you can go with it. It's pretty amazing.
It is. I think, it's unlimited what we can achieve next, and we know when we opened our doors that there was a need, and it's just been amazing how much has been asked of us since then and how much more we have to do. So we're not about to slow down yet.
Okay, well, we all say aloha.